Welcome to the Healing Migraines Naturally podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Leslie Caesar, and I am a licensed naturopathic doctor, former chronic migraine sufferer, and I've dedicated my life to helping other women with chronic migraines and headaches rediscover a migraine-free life. So today on the podcast, a member of my free Facebook group called Healing Migraines Naturally with Leslie Caesar, ND, experienced something very unpleasant related to her migraines this week, and she asked for some advice in the Facebook group. So I thought it would be a great topic to talk about on the podcast. So I have her permission to share her Facebook post on the podcast here. I have removed her last name, but she did give me her permission to share her comment and use her first name. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that up, and we're going to break this down. And I think a lot of you listening are going to relate to what she experienced here. So let me share her comment, and we're going to go into this. All right, so let's hear from Donna here. Okay, so she says, the other day I was driving on an unfamiliar street. It was a very cloudy day, which always affects me neurologically. My eyesight was also affected. I became so disoriented and started driving through a red light. My husband said stop, so I did. It keeps playing on my mind. Does anyone else feel so disconnected? I hate that feeling of being helpless to stop these migraines for over 50 years. I've seen so many neurologists and never was helped. Now I'm on Medicare and prescription drugs are outrageously priced. Any tips? I typically don't drive when I have a migraine, but this day it happened while I was driving. Okay, so I want to break this down because this has so many elements that are so common when it comes to chronic migraines. First of all, we have her. Let's kind of set the scene. Okay, so she's on an unfamiliar street. So it's not a routine roadway, right? A lot of times we get in the car and we are so used to traveling, it's so familiar to us that we kind of get home and we're like, wait a minute, I don't even remember driving. We kind of go on autopilot. So here was a situation where, it sounds like it was unfamiliar. So this is where, right, we want to be at our best. We can't just put it on autopilot. Cloudy day. So this is another phenomenon that can occur for migraine sufferers. So her eyesight was affected. So this is also very, very common with migraines. So when the migraine, it's sort of like classic that sunlight, bright sunlight can affect migraine sufferers. But I have worked with clients over the years where it's a cloudy day that actually affects them more so than the sun. And so there's sort of that particular way the light is being filtered through the clouds, etc., that is actually, they're actually more sensitive to that type of light than the direct bright sunlight. Has flared, people will notice that their vision has changed. Things are blurrier. If they wear glasses, right, suddenly the prescription doesn't seem right anymore. This is pretty common where the eyesight is affected. It gets worse with the migraine. And then she became disoriented, right? And she drove through the red light. Right? She didn't apparently realize, or she was so disoriented, didn't see it, right? Our eyesight is affected. We're trying to drive. A lot of times the LED lights that are now in the traffic lights, I believe they're LED lights, right? They're different types of lights that used to be in the traffic lights, 30, 40 years ago. And they are a little bit brighter. And a lot of times for migraine sufferers, the LED type lighting can be very difficult to process that type of light. So perhaps that was playing a role here too. So we're kind of setting the stage here, right? And again, I don't know Donna. She's not a client of mine. This is just something that she posted in the Facebook group. So anything that I say here, it's just me sort of extrapolating on what she's described here. It's not a direct comment on Donna. I don't know anything about her medical history. Like I say, she's not a client of mine, but I just think, I really empathized with what she went through, and I thought that a lot of people would relate to it. So I'm just going to kind of walk through here and kind of make some, what I think are going to be reasonable assumptions, some reasonable hypotheses as to what was going on here. But again, it's not necessarily, hi there, I want to jump in real quick and tell you about my client, Beth. She was getting 15 to 20 migraines and headaches per month. And as you can imagine, this was impacting her work performance and her confidence. She also has 2 small children, and she was starting to feel like she was a horrible mom because she had nothing left for them at the end of the day. But she reached out and she booked a free consult call with me, and after I asked her about her migraines and her health history, I felt confident that I could help her. I help women uncover the root drivers of their migraines and follow a step-by-step plan to dramatically reduce the frequency by up to 90% without adding more medication or taking a bunch of supplements. So we built her personal migraine map, followed the plan, And now she will get 1 to 2 migraines per year, which she uses ibuprofen to treat if she needs to, versus up to 15 to 20 per month when we first started working together that weren't responding well to any medication. She just reached out to tell me that she got a promotion at work, she's on top of her career again, and has been able to come off all of her migraine medication. But most importantly, she's a confident mom again, and she's attending birthday parties at Jump Zone with her kids and saying yes instead of saying maybe later. I've worked with women like Beth from all over the United States who were told, this is the best we can do, but they were still willing to dig deeper. So if you're serious about changing your migraine story, go to drlesliecaesar.com/apply or tap the link in the show notes. And on our free consult, we'll map out why your migraines keep coming back and the first 3 steps you can take over the next 30 days. I do cap new client spots each month, so if the calendar is full, the doors are closed for now. But if you're done feeling helpless and ready to do the work to heal, pause this episode for 30 seconds and book that consult call now. Reflective specifically to Donna. So we have the stage set here, and then, obviously she's very upset by this. She says it keeps playing on my mind. Again, I would have to assume, right? It's like we want to be able to drive, and we want to be safe while we're driving, right? And if we are not able to drive, that really impacts our independence. I mean, having chronic migraines for over 50 years, I can't imagine how many times Donna has had to cancel plans. Most women in this situation, they're going to feel very reluctant to even make plans. They're going to already feel like their autonomy and independence has been cut to the quick by the migraines because, we can't function, right? We're not autonomous and independent. We've got these migraines that are taking us down many times unpredictably at any moment. We can wake up feeling fine in the morning, and by 4 p.m. we can be, laying on the bathroom floor in agony, right? So it's like with chronic migraines, we already feel like our autonomy and our independence, our self-sufficiency, just our very control over our own body is so impacted. And then, now it's like, can I drive, right? With all of this now, my ability to drive is going to be taken away. So again, I don't know Donna, but I can really appreciate why this would be playing on her mind, experiencing, going out in the intersection and not connecting the fact that the light had turned red, right? So let's break this down a little bit more. I think that there are 2 overall factors that are at play with what she experienced, okay? And we're always looking for, what's the one thing that's going to solve my migraine problem? But like I've talked about on the podcast before, I think listening to this scenario, there are 2 main things that are probably at play here. One of those things is the inherent toxin overload, metabolic waste material overload that is in the body of someone who is suffering from migraines. Okay, I've talked about this on the podcast before. So migraines themselves are a pattern of symptoms that the body generates when there is a toxin overload or a metabolic waste material overload within the body. And so anyone with migraines, that's an indication that there's an overload of metabolic waste material and toxins in the body. Now, our body has the ability to remove this metabolic waste material and toxins from the body. So it's not like we're stuck with this or something's gone wrong. Our body is continuously making metabolic waste material. We are continuously exposed to toxins in the environment. Even before there were man-made toxins, there were still plenty of toxins in the environment. So we have our organs of detoxification to clear the load from the body. But if our organs don't have what they need to run those detoxification pathways, then things are going to back up. And when that happens, there are telltale symptoms that the body generates in response. And there's sort of like a stage 1 or a level 1 toxicity symptoms that usually develop first. I've talked about those in other podcasts. And then the migraines are sort of like a second level. When things keep piling up and piling up and piling up even more, the body starts generating migraines. So a very common symptom that there's an overload of metabolic waste material and toxins in the body is what we call brain fog. Okay, so this is a classic, a textbook, what we call toxicity symptom. Okay, so many times people will start to experience brain fog even before the migraines start, but people don't realize that they're experiencing this symptom. And I've talked about this on the podcast. Unfortunately, in our culture, we don't understand that our body is generating symptoms in response to the conditions within the body not being optimal. We don't know sort of how to read those symptoms. the conditions aren't addressed, the needs of the body aren't met, things start to continue to pile up, and then we start getting migraines, and we say, where do these migraines come from? Whereas when we look at the symptom history of the individual, we can see that there were toxicity symptoms starting to develop prior to the migraines. I've talked about my own personal symptom history or medical history many times on the podcast to sort of explain this. So brain fog, people will feel disoriented. They will feel a little out of body. They'll feel a little disconnected. That's kind of like, all of the cylinders aren't firing 100%, right? So when she talks about this disorientation that she was experiencing, number one, it's a very common symptom that comes along with migraines. Brain fog and migraines, right? It's pretty classic. So a lot of people will say, well, of course she was disoriented. Of course she had brain fog. She was in the throes of a migraine. So again, because the migraine is being kicked off within the body because of this toxin overload, we're going to have other toxicity symptoms at play in addition to the migraines. And disorientation or brain fog is a classic toxicity symptom. I think just the general overload in the body could have generated this disorientation that was particularly acute or noticeable on this day that she was driving. So there are some other clues here. She says that her eyesight was affected. So when there is an overload of metabolic waste material and toxins in the body, the eyes will be affected. We're going to have eye symptoms. So classic symptoms are dark circles under the eyes, watery eyes, itchy eyes, red eyes, dry eye, bags under the eyes, and changes in our vision. Okay, so this is actually a symptom that I'm pretty sensitive to. So my eyesight will change noticeably depending on the buildup of metabolic waste material or toxins in my body. So when we have a migraine, this is why it's so common for people to experience vision changes, right? There things are just a little blurry or things are just a little more out of focus when they have the migraine. Some people with a migraine, they will have double vision. It'll get that profound. And then we have the classic aura with a migraine, right? Where, the classic aura is where you see sort of this scintillating change to the vision that starts out as a sort of like as a little pinpoint or a little blurry spot that grows and grows and grows. And kind of the classic is it expands almost like a donut. So as it gets bigger, the center will clear, and then you have this sort of donut ring of this scintillating perception within the visual field, and that will just keep getting bigger and bigger until it finally kind of gets big enough where it's no longer it seems like it just leaves the field because it's gotten so big. So, her eyesight was also affected. That again is another toxicity symptom, which makes sense because when we're in the throes of a migraine, it's sort of like an acute toxin overload or sort of toxin spill that occurs. So we have that little clue with this symptom as well. Again, I don't know Donna. I don't know anything about her health history, but it's very common. People before the migraines start, they will experience some brain fog, etc. Maybe vision goes up and down, in and out, starts to change a little bit day by day. Those are fairly common. Other conditions are notable for brain fog. So when you think of like ADD, okay? This is sort of like, well, I can't focus, right? I can't pay attention to things. I have difficulty focusing. I'm having a hard time reading. I got to read the sentence over and over again. It's not getting into my brain, right? So, people can have ADD without migraines, for sure. But ADD, all of those symptoms that are so characteristic of ADD, those are also toxicity symptoms, okay? So again, the fundamental baseline of somebody with ADD, their brain is actually hypo-functioning, or it's not kind of firing on all cylinders. When they look at the brain waves of someone with ADD, it's actually like a low brainwave state. This is why stimulants are so effective for somebody with ADD, because you're stimulating the brain, you're revving things up. And people with ADD, they'll become hyperactive as a coping mechanism. They're not purposely doing it, but their brain is like, okay, we got to pay attention here. How can I get things revved up? Well, I can start moving, right? Maybe if I start moving the body around and I start tapping and fidgeting, that'll get things revved up a little bit more, and I can actually focus and concentrate. So that's where the hyperactivity will come in. You can look at, anytime you have this brain fog type symptom, that's a toxicity symptom. So that really fits with migraine. So to me, when I saw this, disorientation, vision changes, throes of the migraine, and unfortunately, people can have so much brain fog, the light changes from green to yellow to red, and we're so foggy that we're just not registering those changes. So that might have been what happened to Donna here while she was driving. So that's the first thing that comes to mind as a factor here that was driving what she experienced. The second thing that comes to mind is another phenomenon that's very common amongst chronic migraine sufferers. So Donna says, she's had these migraines for over 50 years. Nothing has helped. And she is feeling helpless, right? And so I have to, again, I would assume, not knowing Donna, but just thinking about someone in her situation and the number of clients over the years that I've had that have also been in this situation. Hi there. I want to jump in real quick and tell you about my client, Beth. She was getting 15 to 20 migraines and headaches per month. And as you can imagine, this was impacting her work performance and her confidence. She also has 2 small children, and she was starting to feel like she was a horrible mom because she had nothing left for them at the end of the day. But she reached out and she booked a free consult call with me, and after I asked her about her migraines and her health history, I felt confident that I could help her. I help women uncover the root drivers of their migraines and follow a step-by-step plan to dramatically reduce the frequency by up to 90% without adding more medication or taking a bunch of supplements. So we built her personal migraine map, followed the plan, and now she will get 1 to 2 migraines per year, which she uses ibuprofen to treat if she needs to, versus up to 15 to 20 per month when we first started working together that weren't responding well to any medication. She just reached out to tell me that she got a promotion at work, she's on top of her career again, and has been able to come off all of her migraine medication. But most importantly, she's a confident mom again, and she's attending birthday parties at Jump Zone with her kids and saying yes instead of saying maybe later. I've worked with women like Beth from all over the United States who were told, this is the best we can do, but they were still willing to dig deeper. So if you're serious about changing your migraine story, go to drlesliecaesar.com/apply or tap the link in the show notes, and on our free consult, we'll map out why your migraines keep coming back and the first 3 steps you can take over the next 30 days. I do cap new client spots each month, so if the calendar is full, the doors are closed for now. But if you're done feeling helpless and ready to do the work to heal, pause this episode for 30 seconds and book that consult call now. We have to somehow cope with this constant pain, okay? And again, we're not doing this consciously. This is something that the mind, the body, our being, if you will, starts to do unbeknownst to us. We're not in control over it. We're not purposely doing it. But what happens to people when they're in chronic pain like this is they will start to disassociate from their physical body. So sort of the unconscious part of us says, you know what, I'm in constant physical pain. This is very unpleasant. How can I alleviate this pain, right? No medication has worked. I've tried changing my diet. I've tried avoiding things, right? Nothing's working for me. So how can I avoid? How can I sort of get out? How can I not feel all of this continuous constant pain? And so people will disassociate from their physical body. And this is a coping mechanism. And so when this starts to happen to people, they will start to feel sort of out of body. It's a feeling that people will describe as, I don't quite feel like I'm all here. I'm here, but I'm not here, right? I can hear you, but it's almost like, you're far away, right? I can see you, we're talking, I'm here, but it's almost like I'm kind of looking at myself as an observer, right? I'm not quite in the scene. When people employ this coping mechanism, sometimes this can actually help them not be consciously aware of the pain. So the pain is there, but it starts to recede from their consciousness. So when I have clients that have been, they've had daily head pain for decades, many times they'll say, I have pain all the time. If I stop and I really think about it, yeah, the pain is there. But most of the time, I don't even notice the pain anymore. I'm just going about my day. I'm, going to the grocery store. I'm doing things around the house. I'm going to my book club. But I'm not really aware of the pain. It's there, but I just don't really notice it anymore. It's got to get really, really bad for me to become consciously aware of it and go, oh yeah, there's that pain. But if I'm stop and think about it, yeah, it's still there. It's there all the time, but I just don't quite feel it anymore. All right. So this is like I say, this is a coping mechanism that the body uses, not just with chronic migraine pain, but, people have chronic back pain or, other types of physical pain. People will disassociate from their physical body is in an attempt to not feel that physical pain as much. So that came to mind too as to a possible reason why this happened to Donna. Again, I don't know her. She's not a client of mine, but when I saw that nothing has helped and she's been, struggling with this for 50 years, we have to raise the question, has her body, has her unconscious mind started to disassociate from her physical body to try to lower her perception of the pain? Okay. Those two things I thought were going to be valuable to talk about on the podcast. So, she says, any tips? Okay. Now, here's the thing. Our mind is always looking for, what can I do to get out of this pain? And this is a survival mechanism. We have reflexes that are built in. If you put your hand on a hot stove, the reflexes kick in and you will remove your hand without any conscious effort. And in fact, you can't really even keep your hand on the stove, right? So when there's pain, we are designed to do whatever it takes to get out of that pain. But we're very well suited to get out of pain if it's a hot stove, right? Like, oh, hot stove, reflexes, I'm out of here, okay? And there's just one thing that's causing the pain, it's the hot stove, right? So it's like, stop touching the hot stove, I'm not going to be in pain, right? So when there's one thing that's causing the pain, it's very easy for the mind to identify that one thing and then like, okay, how are we going to stop this one thing? So our mind is very oriented towards thinking like this. It's like, okay, what's the one thing that's causing this so I can stop this or I can protect myself from this one thing and then I won't have this pain. And I wish one thing were causing migraines, right? Because then we could employ this and we would feel better. But like I've talked about on the podcast, migraines, by the time we have migraines, we have developed pretty serious blockers or deficiencies or missing pieces within what I call the three principles or the three things that our body needs to function optimally. And or you could say be in a state of health. And when we're in a state of health, our body doesn't generate symptoms and we feel good. Okay. So, this is where looking for a tip, and again, this is absolutely no criticism of Donna. I couldn't be more sympathetic to where she is. But if she's experiencing, right, 50 years of this, she's had 50 years of, what I would have to assume pretty significant blockers or missing pieces or deficiencies within these three principles that are highly interconnected within each other. We're past the point of tips. I'm just going to be honest with everybody here, right? But, there's a whole industry, multi-billion-dollar industry around giving tips to migraine sufferers. And this is what really gets me. I'm in a lot of migraine Facebook groups. So I have my own migraine Facebook group. I'm a member in a lot of other migraine Facebook groups. I don't comment. I'm not there to, try to sway people or anything like that. I'm just in these groups so that I can keep my finger on the pulse of the migraine community. And in these Facebook groups, what people are looking for, right? They're looking for, the copper bracelet. They're looking for the special form of magnesium that's going to be the one thing that solves it, right? Is it this particular brand of Butterbur, right? We're always looking for, what's the thing I could do, right, to solve this problem. But it's always sort of this like, what's this one thing I could try next? What's this one little thing I could do? And you're not going to put the pieces of the puzzle together like that, unfortunately. The time for tips is when things are just starting to build up, when we're starting to get the first initial little symptoms that are not even causing us that much suffering. They're considered to be so minor, unfortunately, that we don't even realize that they're symptoms. No one has told us that they're symptoms, or they're considered to be something that's kind of routine or very common. And so we're not kind of jumping on it right at the beginning when things, a little intervention can solve a relatively small problem. I don't have any tips for you, right? What I would suggest, if you are in this state, I have worked with many, many women over the years that have had migraines for decades, daily head pain for decades. What is required is a very careful assessment as to where you stand within these three principles. What are your specific blockers or missing pieces? And then how are we going to address this? Because again, the other really insidious thing about migraines is once you get into this chronic migraine state, any little change that the body experiences can tip us into a migraine, right? So, it's hard to make changes, even if they're positive health supporting changes, when any little change makes you feel worse, right? So for chronic migraine sufferers, you have to approach this carefully, right? It's kind of like if you're going to defuse a bomb, you just don't start pulling wires randomly. You've got to really carefully understand how the bomb is wired, and then you've got to make the best determination as to what wire you're going to cut first and how you're going to dismantle that. With chronic migraines, like I say, it's not how many things have you tried over the years, right? That are these little tip type things. So what I would say to anybody, to Donna out there or anybody in her situation, the good news is that our bodies are designed to heal and recover. What I would say is, again, not knowing Donna, but anybody in her situation, right, I would have to ask, has anyone done this analysis to determine, okay, what are the missing pieces? What is your body missing? What is your body lacking that is preventing it from returning to a state of health? Every living thing on the planet has a self-healing mechanism built into it, and we're no exception to that. So if that process is not occurring, what is preventing that healing response from happening? So unfortunately, no one has an Imitrex deficiency. No one has a Topamax deficiency, right? And of course, when we go into the doctor's office, when we go into the neurologist, we know this. Nobody wants to take these medications, but we're feeling so terrible that we feel stuck between a rock and a hard place. But unfortunately, the medications, right, they're never going to address these underlying deficiencies or blockers or missing pieces, right? They may make us feel a little bit better in the short term, but ultimately our body is going to fight the suppressive effects of the medication and figure out a way to generate the symptoms that it's trying to generate. And again, not knowing Donna, but unfortunately what she shared here in her post, it sounds like she's experienced that quite a bit over the decades. So if you are in this situation, I would encourage you to reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to talk with you on a free consult call and ask you some questions about your current migraine situation, your health history, and if I think that I can help you, I will tell you that. If I don't think I can help you, I will tell you that too. But like I say, when I hear that somebody has suffered from migraines for 50 years, I don't think, hopeless. I think let's get to work. Let's dive in here and get this turned around so that this woman can feel better. I hope this was helpful. Like I say, when we see this level of disorientation and difficulty sort of being connected to decisions that have to be made while we're driving and reactions and so on, I think of toxin overload in the body generating severe or extreme brain fog, which is exactly what these waste materials and toxins do, or this very real coping mechanism that gets deployed where people will start to disassociate from their physical body so that they're not feeling the pain consciously. And this, one of these things can be at work in someone, or in most cases it's a combination. It's sort of like a little combination of both of those things going on. So again, thank you for joining me today. And if you're not in the free Facebook group, Healing Migraines Naturally with Leslie Caesar ND, go ahead and join us on Facebook. We'd love to have you. And I do like to use the posts as appropriate for helping to teach these concepts on the podcast. So thanks so much for listening today, and I will talk to you soon.